Welcome to Commander Central episode 269, and today we're looking at Patreon supporter Joe Swanson's Glissa Artifact Storm deck. I'm Max.
And I am Chris.
Chris, what's going on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon?
I'm recording a podcast.
And then you're heading to the shop, I'm assuming.
Yes, gotta work.
Yep, I'll be there tonight. I will be there.
Oh, really? That I don't believe you. I'm sorry, Max. I love you.
Want to bet a dollar? You want to bet a dollar?
No, I don't want to bet a dollar because now you'll just show up just to spite me for the bet of the dollar.
For the dollar, yeah. Nope, I will be there. I have some out-of-town listeners are coming, and there's some newer local people that have interacted with me in other public places. So I'm going to pop in and play a couple games tonight.
Oh, sweetness.
Yeah.
Make sure you download the MTG Companion app.
I need it for EDH.
Yes, you do.
You're kidding.
Yes, you do.
Why?
Because, this is set up, so back in the past, when EDH nights would go off, stores would run Wizards Event Reporter just to keep tally of how many players in the store, because you need to show X amount of participation for X events that you have in your store, because Wizards looks at it for your allocation numbers. Well, now that we don't have Wizards Event Reporter, we have no way of getting your DCI numbers or having you registered in a system, so you have to register yourself.
Gotcha.
Yep. I could put you in as a guest, per se, but then that becomes harder on the store when you're trying to sell product, take care of other customers, when people who come in to play can just put in the code that we have readily available for everybody, and then I can just walk over the computer, make sure you're in, good to go. I don't have to do all the legwork plus everything else I have to do on a daily basis. So.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Good to know. Thank you. I'll get on that this afternoon.
Yep, for any of you who play other formats as well, I would highly suggest downloading all that and making a Wizards account if you don't play Arena already. If you play Arena, you should already have one, because every tournament or sanctioned play that you end up going to, if you play a format other than EDH, will require you to have this. So it is something to do now, get it done with, so you don't have to do it last minute.
Cool. I am set to go. I remembered my Arena password, which is my spell table password, so
Woo!
We're set. Thank you. I appreciate that. I knew you needed it for, sanctioned play, I guess is what I'm going to say, versus casual, but I know it does help the store with numbers and whatnot, so thank you for the heads up.
Yep, not a problem.
Well, if any of you out there want to talk to us about your companion app experience, because I just got into it, how would they do that, Chris?
You can reach us on a multitude of social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us online at cmdrcentral.com, and you can also find us on YouTube by searching CMDR Central.
You can also head over to patreon.com and get a Decks You Play episode just like this by supporting us or just joining our community to chat and play some virtual EDH. Okay, Chris, should we get into this deck tech today?
Sure. Before we start this, Mr. Joe Swanson, I want to ask you a very personal question, and you can hit me up on Twitter or Facebook, as I said, and send me this. I want to know if this is your real name or not, because if it is, that's awesome. If it's not, then it's still awesome. But either way, I'm just curious about that.
You're just getting major Family Guy vibes, aren't you?
I am, just ripped out Joe Swanson. That's what I'm seeing right now.
It would be cool to know. Well, I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah, because if not, then you just you make a call up to the Family Guy producers and be like, hey, you guys stole my name. This is how this works, right?
I'm sure there have been multiple Joe Swansons in the past. But yes, if no one else has claimed it, he should.
Exactly.
Okay, so like always, we always ask a bunch of questions to our listeners when we do these Decks You Play shows. And we always start out with, what is your meta like? Joe said, this is a hard question. Over the last 13 months, all of my games, except for 3, have been online over Spell Table, mostly via the Play EDH Discord. Over there, this deck is rated mid-tier and holds its own against most anything it comes up against. Besides that, I have 2 separate groups I used to play with in the pre-COVID times. One at work, which is super spiky and high-powered, where virtually all games end in combo, and the other is at the LGS, which runs a wide spectrum of power levels.
Okay, which I would expect, because usually when you have a more niche group, such as your work buddies, you all know what you're going to be playing, You walk into LGS, you have multiple people in there, so everyone's going to be within, usually X amount of a boundary, between low tier to mid tier to maybe a few high tiers running around. That's usually unlikely, just so everyone can have fun.
I'm just walking in with Brago tonight, that's all I'm bringing.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll bring my CEDH deck, because apparently my new Dragon's Approach deck is CEDH quality. So, it's pretty dumb. All right, so next question we ask is, what is the goal of the deck? Now, Joe told us it may sound strange, but it plays like a control deck, which, honestly, Joe, that does not sound strange whatsoever. Golgari is amazing for the control aspect, the colors in it, everything else like that. The deck uses removal, to drive Glissa's recursion engine, and it bides its time until it can draw any one of the different combos that all pretty much end the game.
And then, of course, what are the weaknesses or areas they would like us to focus on? Joe said there's nothing this deck likes more is destroying things to keep a clean board for everyone. It is very effective, but telegraphs what I'm trying to do and creates a bunch of arch enemy situations. I'm willing to call that a pilot error more than anything. Yeah, I enjoy blowing things up too much. Yeah, I get that too. If you have any ideas how to help fly under the radar easier, I'm open to them, even if it nudges the deck in a slightly less controlling direction. The removal drives the Glissa engine, but there may be better ways to do that. He's also always testing the deck, so things do change. There's a list of cards in the maybe board that have been in and out of the deck, and maybe there are other cards that could go back and be swapped in and out of.
Yeah, that makes sense. So budget limit is always the last question that we ask, because we don't want to suggest, like a $50 card to someone that would fit amazing in the deck if it's something they can't afford, so we'll look for cards that are as good as that $50 card, but within, more of your budget-friendly area. And Joe told us that since this is his favorite deck, the budget's very flexible. However, he tries to limit the cards to about $40 or less when he can. Joe, I'm going to call you out on this one and call a bunch of shenanigans because I saw that there's a Bayou in there and that ain't no $40 cards, so we'll have to discuss that.
Maybe that was from the before times.
Oh yeah, I can see that because that's when I originally got my first duels. They were really cheap too, so...
Okay, well, let's get into the deck. The commander, like we said, is Glissa the Traitor. It's a legendary creature, zombie Phyrexian elf, I believe it has now been eroded to. It's a black and 2 green mana for a 3/3 with first strike and death touch, and whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Chris, we have experience against this, don't we?
We do have experience against this, and I've actually played against a highly tuned one as well, whereas the one that we're discussing is Dana's, because he uses Death Touch Tribal to kind of limit the deck a little bit. But I have played against, a straight-up all-artifact Glissa deck, highly tuned, and it can be very ferocious.
Yeah, I was trying to think back. I don't think I've ever really played against anything other than Dana's Glissa deck. I'm sure I've seen them in the past, but... they probably did a little bit of everything, the artifacts, but still really good value cards. So
yes.
This was a fun deck to look at for me. So why don't we start with the land base? Chris, what do we got there?
So we're going to start with the lands, you say. Okay, so we got 35 lands, technically 36 lands due to one of the MDFC cards that's in here. So we have a Bayou, a Bojuka Bog, Command Tower, Evolving Wilds, 4 forests, 1 Llanowar Wastes, 1 Overgrown Tomb, 4 Snow-Covered Forest, 8 snow-covered swamps, 5 swamps, 1 tainted wood, 1 terramorphic expanse, 1 undergrowth stadium, 1 verdant catacombs, 1 woodland cemetery, and 1 woodland chasm. And then for the 36th land would be for Balageta Recovery, which is a green source if you choose so to play it that way.
And it enters tapped, correct?
I do believe so because it's not the really nice...
Yeah.
Usually the rare MDFCs have the ability to come into play untapped, but anything that's in the uncommon slot or less, I don't know if there is any ones that's less than uncommon, aside from the land base themselves, comes into play tapped.
Gotcha. So what do we think about this land base, Chris? I mean, the deck, 35 lands, and the deck has an average CMC of 2.72.
I like it at the 35 lands, just due to the simple fact that this is an artifact theme deck, so there are quite a few mana rocks in here, along with, as we get into sorceries and stuff, there is quite a few ramp spells. I think there's 4 ramp spells. 1, 2, 3 ramp spells for sure. I might be missing one. I could have sworn I counted 4 last night. But between that seems like it is enough for a 2-color deck. Now, I personally have been changing the way that I've been building my decks, and I've been lowering the land count. It's something that me and our LGS owner, Phil, were discussing, because he's been running like 33 lands to 32 lands in 1 or 2 color decks, and it's been working very phenomenal. So I've been trying to tweak it back because I've been getting flooded a lot lately. And it could be due to the simple fact of running too many mana rocks or too many ramp spells. That could be where my cuts could be too. But overall, I've been trying to cut back so it's more efficient. So 35 for me seems really good. Now, the thing that catches me off guard with this land base that you have here, Joe, is the simple fact that you're running how do I want to put this, a mix of snow and non-snow lands. So I noticed that within the deck, I see that you are running a Dead of Winter. Now, in order to run Dead of Winter more effectively, I would either tweak that to all snow covers, or I would just cut the Dead of Winter in general. Now, if I cut the Dead of Winter, I would add a Field of the Dead, because then you can leave your land base as is and not really, swap things out. And now, while this doesn't fit like your artifact theme that you're going for, you could make this more into that control theme, because as a control deck in any competitive format, what you're trying to do is be a tempo-based deck. You want incremental advantage over your opponent. So just playing a land in general that creates a 2/2 token that can become a blocker or a beater later in the game is the incremental value that you're just going to outpace your opponents, because you're not having to put any mana into it. So you can put your mana into your removal spells and other stuff like that. That's my, for sure, first suggestion that I would add. Depending on which route you want to go, cut one, add the other, or add one and still run Dead of Winter. I just don't like the idea of Dead of Winter with not a full suite of snowlands.
Yeah, 15 snowlands is probably right on the cusp of where you want for Dead of Winter, but that's assuming they're all out on the battlefield. But at the same time, maybe you want Dead of Winter to be one of those flex spells where you only use it for 3 or 4, -3, -4 type of thing, but who knows?
Yeah, that could be.
I like the idea of keeping them and adding Field of the Dead, just because it is a incremental advantage. You play a land, you get a dude. My thing is, I feel like 35 is good at this CMC, because I think that's how many I run in Tuvasa, and Tuvasa is 2.8. What I don't understand is there's not a lot of utility lands in this deck. It's pretty much everything produces colored mana for a deck that doesn't require a lot of colored mana in their cost. You know what I mean?
Yes, I understand that too. Yeah, I thought about, like your Ancient Tombs and other stuff like that could be going in, But then you start cutting, into other stuff that you'd probably want to keep anyways. So then you almost have to run the Field of the Dead route, because you're just so much value in just playing that card in general then.
Right. But some things that work with the artifact suite in this deck that I would recommend is something like Inventor's Fair.
Yep.
Comes in untapped. It gains you life if you have a bunch of artifacts, and you can sacrifice it to tutor for an artifact, which is great. I also prefer running like Fabled Passage over Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse, just because there are the times where that land might come in untapped off of the Fabled Passage.
Yeah, I mean, you could run all three of them. Like, if I were to run a Field of the Dead suite, I would probably run all three of them, because that's just extra triggers at return. Run as many fetches as possible without actually hindering what you're doing. And it seems like you're more of like the elitist, like as Dana always discusses, because you're only running Verdant, where you could be running Bloodstained Mire and Pluto Delta, and I swear there's one more, and it's just escaping me right now.
Windswept Heath you could run.
Yes.
You could run the blue-green one.
Yeah, all that stuff, but you're not running them. So I'm assuming, you're more along the elitist path, or maybe, you just realize that having too many fetches is actually a detriment. But, this is an artifact deck. You always have access to Crucible of Worlds. So, I mean, that's another thing to consider as well. If you want to do that with your land suite, adding other stuff that helps out the land suite is just a bonus in general in this deck.
And that goes without mentioning the 3 artifact lands that could be ran in this deck, because we have the 2 monocolored ones and the new dual land that comes in tapped. It's a guild gate, but it's an artifact land out of Modern Horizons 2.
Yep. And it's indestructible, so I mean, if you're running into people that are playing land destruction or something, unless it's exile, you're always going to have that land out.
Yeah, totally. Any other suggestions for the land suite here, Chris?
The land suite, I like it as is. Yes, you could run more land destruction, but judging by the meta that Joe runs through, I don't know if land destruction really is on the aspect of where you need to be, or looks like he's more ramping into combo base and everything like that. Now, when you're playing in a lower tier type of format with other people who are just, playing to have fun, that's when you're going to need the land destruction to get rid of those pesky Cabal coffers or the Nykthoses or stuff like that. Mazes of Ith that are keeping you from coming through for, whatever little incremental combat damage you get in. That would be where a suggestion would come in, is pending on meta choices. But in combo base, I think you want the color when, immediately, as soon as possible, and then hold it up.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's move on to enchantments, because there's only 2 of them.
Sure is only 2 of them.
Joe is running Pernicious Deed, which is 1 black-green for an enchantment. It has an X activation cost, where it's X and sacrifice it, and you destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost X or less. Along with Phyrexian Arena, 1 black-black, draw an extra card and lose a life at your upkeep.
Yes. Now, I saw that there's a Sylvan Library chilling out in the maybe board, and honestly, in my opinion, that shouldn't even be there. That should just be jammed in that deck immediately. And it's not because it's such a powerful card. It's due to the simple fact that overall deck is missing that card advantage amount, where you're drawing extra cards, you're doing stuff like that. And that just lets you filter through the top cards of your deck so you can get, certain cards that you could need because you're playing a control route. So you want to see as many cards as possible on each turn to get, whatever key pieces you need. Now you're trying to also, try to fly underneath the radar, is what you want. And I don't think you're really going to be able to because Glissa's Glissa. There is no really flying underneath the radar with something like that. So the ability to get whatever removal spells you can and then play that political game of, hey, I'm holding 3 removal spells, so how about you go the other way and I won't destroy your stuff, is another game plan you could go.
Yeah, totally agree. I definitely think Sylvan Library needs to go in. Like you said, this is a control deck and kind of a combo deck. So the faster you see your combo, the better you're going to win that game. So if you can see 3 cards a turn versus 2 cards a turn with Phyrexian Arena, or now you're looking at 4 cards with Phyrexian Arena, that's huge. So the faster you can draw, the more you draw, the better.
Agreed. So Pernicious Deed is one that kind of catches me off guard. While yes, you can, swing it so you don't destroy as much of your stuff with the CMC. 3 mana plus usually you're running it for 3 or 4 for cracking to destroy stuff. And your CMC is so low anyways, I don't know what you're really, missing with it. I don't know if I would be running it because you can't recur it. Whereas like you already have Niv's Disc in here, which does the same thing, but is, recurable. While yes, Niv's Disc costs 1 more mana to cast, it is only 1 to crack. It comes into play tapped. Yes, it slows you down, but having that on the board kind of shows everyone, telegraphs what you're doing. So they know that you have a board wipe, but if you're not really like drawing the hate to you, I think Niv's Disc is better because you just recur it. But Pernicious Deed is such a good card. I'm not really a fan of it in this style of a deck.
Yeah, Pernicious Deed is one of those cards that when I have gone to try to build a Golgari deck or ran one in the past, it was one of those cards that I put in right away and it got taken out. It's a little slower. It's very use case. You need to know exactly how much mana you need to put into it, and it's a rattlesnake card. That's what it's made for, and maybe it is. That's the point of it in this deck, is it just draws out the removal.
And maybe that is. It could be. But whereas, like Niv's Disc, since you're playing in a combo-themed meta from the sounds of it, you could just add the other 2 pieces of that combo and have, an infinite destruction, where you destroy everything on the board every turn, but none of your stuff dies. That's Darksteel Citadel and the one that turns all permanents into artifacts or something like that.
Mycosynth Lattice and then Darksteel Forge and Niv's Disc.
Yeah, where all your stuff's indestructible, and then Niv's Disc just destroys everything your opponents, but you keep all your stuff. I mean, that's another aspect to think of. And then you can just keep recurring it with Glissa in the early game. So, I mean, it's something to consider. But Pernicious Deed, if it works for you, it works for you, and I would leave it in then.
Yeah. My note would be, seeing that this is about maybe just destroying creatures, destroying permanents, Revel in Riches would be a great card in this deck. It is a little slower, so it's 4 colorless and a black, but whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasure token, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 10 or more treasures, you win the game.
Yes.
Another great way to just generate value. You're already blowing up your opponent's stuff. Why not make yourself a little bit more of the archenemy and rack those treasures up? Or you can just be like, you know what? I'm always going to use the treasures to, fuel all my X spells that are in this deck. So there are ways where maybe you aren't going to use Revel in Riches as a win con by itself, but it's going to fuel your other more powerful cards in your deck.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That's actually a really good idea. Now, I don't think green and black make a whole lot of treasures per se. I mean, there are other things like that, so you can't really cheat that type of deal. But since you're destroying so many things, it is definitely worth it.
Right. My final suggestion is Phyrexian Scriptures. This is a 4-mana saga from Dominaria. 2 black. The first chapter is you put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. That creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. The second chapter is destroy all non-artifact creatures. And in the deck list, there are not very many non-artifact creatures in this list. So it plays right into the deck that's already built. Mm-hmm. And then the final chapter is exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. So you get to keep all your stuff. You can keep that recursion engine going, but you get rid of all your opponents' graveyards in case maybe they're running some graveyard recursion or a reanimator deck. It just plays right into keeping sure you're the only one getting to use your second hand, which is the graveyard.
Yes, that is awesome. Yeah, that's definitely something with this deck that you need to consider is, since you're destroying everything, is ways of destroying people's graveyards but keeping yours intact.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, let's move over to the sorceries.
Sorceries. So we have 11 sorceries. We have Balaged Recovery, Cultivate, Damnation, Dead of Winter, Demonic Tutor, Diabolic Tutor, Exsanguinate, Kodama's Reach, Never, Rampant Growth, and Tendrils of Agony. Tendrils. Yeah, Dirty Storm players. I see how you are. Didn't we have a discussion about this? Isn't Storm my least favorite mechanic?
I think that was on your list. Yes, but in a combo-focused meta, this card will win games.
Well, this isn't really built to necessarily do it this way, because there are other ways of doing stuff, so it's not like dedicated onto the Storm path, which is fine, because it's not like what you're doing is you're going to sit there for 20 minutes and goldfish cards to Storm. You're going to show the combo twice, like how your infinite loop is of casting cards, and then you're just going to tendril someone, I mean, so that's quick and easy, in this type of scene.
I do like that you brought up that, the Storm isn't the main way to win in this deck, and especially when you look at the deck list, he had it set as custom categories on Architect, and the category says Storm of Last Resort, so this is definitely not Plan A, Plan B, this is like Plan G way at the bottom.
Yep, it's definitely good. I really like the Sorcery Suite. There were a few things that I would suggest for this. Now, since you want this to be more of a control deck, I want to edit a few things, that fit that sub-theme of it, where you're like, no, I don't want this to happen, so I'm going to blow up the board, or I'm going to destroy something, or I'm going to do something else that just helps overall. So my suggestions were All is Dust is definitely the first suggestion. Seeing how you're running X amount of artifacts, it's so much, why not have everyone sacrifice all colored permanents? So, well, you don't have any colored permanents usually, so everyone else just sacrifices their boards, and you feel, just wonderful about it. The other thing I really wanted to suggest immediately for this is, since there is the lack of the card draw, green has a few good sorcery speed ones, as well as black has a lot of them. While yes, it costs life, it is 40 life, so I mean, unless you are always getting ganged up on, you definitely need that card draw aspect built into this deck.
Yeah, great points there. I was looking at the sorceries, and I was looking at that maybe board, and seeing Culling Ritual sitting in the maybe board. This is a new card from Strixhaven for 4 mana. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less, and then you add black or green for each permanent destroyed this way. Sure, it's going to destroy quite a few of your artifacts, but if it knocks off a bunch of your opponent's tokens or small creatures, you're going to get all those artifacts back with Glissa, because Glissa's 3 mana, not 2. And again, you're going to get a bunch of this mana and fuel it into some X spells, whether it's Exsanguinate, Torment to Hailfire, any big X spell you want to put. Maybe you put one of those X spells from Zendikar Rising, that, Malakir Rebirth that lets you bring back stuff. That's the correct one, right?
Yeah, or you could do like a Finale of Devastation or something, or there's a couple of other ones that are in green that you could do. You could Court of Calling for something that could be another tutor into a combo piece or something like that. I mean, there are many aspects of where you could pump that mana into that would be worth it. I mean, it could also just be that if you are in more of a combo-based meta, that these people are all playing low artifacts anyway, so you just wipe their entire board, whereas you already have that recursion engine built into your deck. So if you wipe your board, it's like, okay, give me 2 turns and I just rebuild my board. I mean, It's that simple.
And the card I was thinking of was Agadeem's Awakening. That's the mythic.
Okay.
Where you return different creature cards from your graveyard that have different CMCs of X or less.
Yes.
But I've never seen someone cast a Culling Ritual and not net double-digit worth of mana. Like, it is a powerhouse card, and I totally agree with your point, Chris. I didn't even think about that, is that this is a combo-based meta. A lot of that stuff is all low-to-the-ground CMC. You're going to wreck an entire pod if you cast this card more often than not, probably.
Yeah, I mean, and it's such a good card. I wish I had a good deck to put one in personally. And after looking at this deck, it makes me want to build an artifact deck of some sort. So I've always wanted to do some sort of deck like that. So, and this might be a good idea, is to see if I can find a Golgari or something like that that can, do wild, wacky shenanigans, because it seems like it'd be fun.
Yeah, otherwise, I agree with you. This sorcery package is great. There's a couple tutors, there's some ramp, and then there's some just destruction spells. We talked about Dead of Winter. There's an Exsanguinate to finish off, the game. There's a Never to Return, which is the split card from Amonkhet. The Never side destroys a creature or planeswalker. The return side says exile target card from a graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token for doing it. I don't know how often that return side gets cast. Mainly, I think it's the Never End that is cast most often.
Yeah, no, you could also run a few more board wipes and stuff in there and cut maybe some of the targeted removal and still stay within, it okay curve-ish. Like you get your Texas Deluge. Crux of Fate is 5 mana, so yes, it does go a little bit higher than Damnation. But you could play a Languish, because I saw that there was a 2-mana spell that gives just a target creature -4/-4, so Languish hits all creatures for -4/-4. You could run a Decree of Pain, which also has a cycling ability on it for 4 mana. The other big one that I was surprised not to see in here is a Maelstrom Pulse. Now, if you're playing against anything that's creating multiple tokens of something, which I know a lot of combo decks do, they'll start creating, like multiple Mana Crypts or any stuff like that, you just can Maelstrom Pulse something out of the game and hit all copies of that too, which is phenomenal, in a aspect of if you need it that way.
Yeah, totally agree. I think if this deck was handed to me and looking at the sorceries, I think I'd be great with it. I think there are minor improvements, going from a Never to maybe a Hero's Downfall or a Vraska's Contempt, going, like we said, just small minor improvements that could make this a lot better and still not really change how the deck functions.
Agreed.
Okay, Chris. Instant time.
Instants! Where are our instants? They're on here somewhere. We're scrolling. I can't seem to find them. Oh, wait, now I found them because there's 17 of them, and there's so many. So this package is mainly all where the targeted removal's coming in from the looks of it.
Yeah.
So with the 17 of them, we have an Assassin's Trophy, an Avoid Fate, Beast Within, Dismember, Entomb, Grasp of Darkness, Heroic Intervention, Imp's Mischief, Murder, Nature's Claim, Noxious Revival, Poison the Cup, Putrefy, Return to Nature, Sudden Death, Vampiric Tutor, and Wilt. And the first thing I notice immediately with this is the amount of enchantment and artifact destruction that's in here. So that just leads me to believe, as I was saying before, this is probably a heavy combo-based meta because that's where majority of your combo pieces come from, are your enchantments and artifacts. Now there's a few other, targeted creature removal, like Grasp of Darkness was the one I was discussing, just a few moments ago where Languish does the same thing, except for this is for target creature. Then we have a few protection spells in Heroic Intervention, Avoid Fate. Technically, you could consider Beast Within kind of a protection spell because you destroy your own, but you still get the token out of it. I mean, you could think about it that way. And then you have a few other, things that help with the board state, or like your recursion thing in the Entomb. You got your Vampiric Tutor to tutor stuff up. I mean, all that fun jazz. It seems very solid package. The only thing that I would suggest immediately is that there's a few cards that there are just better versions of that card. And the first one that pops out at me is Murder. I love this card because I love seeing people play it because I think it's, very underrated. It's 3 mana, just destroy target creature. But in the recent years, we've been getting ones that are the same exact value, 1 colorless and double black for an instant that not only destroys a creature, but it does something else. So Heroic Intervention is the first one that popped into my head, destroys a creature or a planeswalker. I do believe there's a Sorcery Speed one that came out in Modern Horizons 2 that destroys a creature or a planeswalker, and then something with counters where you gain life or something like that with the counters. So that's another aspect one, that you could think about as well.
Yeah, I know there was one from Kaldheim that exiles target creature or planeswalker for 2 black, but we don't want to be exiling stuff that often in this deck.
Yeah. Now, for me, overall, like a few of the suggestions that popped into my mind for this is, like you go for the throat, Walk the Plank. Now, Walk the Plank is double black, where it destroys a creature or non-merfolk creature. So, I mean, if you're playing against Merfolk combo or Merfolk in general, then you just kind of blank with that card. But you can also throw it at someone else, because you got to think, you're not going to run into people who are playing 3 Merfolk decks in a 4-man pod. Only one will be, so you can put Walk the Plank into someone else, and then your other cards into the Merfolk player. Vraska's Contempt was another one I was thinking about. 4 mana instant, exile, but you gain 2 life. So, I mean, you can exile something that's pesky, whereas, you can't really use it on your stuff to start cheating recursion and everything, but it's something to consider as well.
Yeah, the only one I could really think of, and this kind of goes with the combo meta, is a Corrosive Grip.
Mm-hmm.
It has split second, so right there you're going to stop any shenanigans that might be going on.
Yes, agreed. I just actually thought of an enchantment now off the top of my head too, because I was sitting here flipping through everything, looking, quick at everything. And would a Greater Good not be good in this deck? It's like I'm trying to think of card draw that I could throw in here, and Greater Good seems okay. You can sack off one of your artifact creatures or whatever, get X amount of card draw, pitch what you don't need, kill something, Glissa recurs it, and you can just kind of keep that little tiny chain going. Yes, it's not your broken Greater Good stuff, but it's enough to really just give you incremental advantage.
That's a cool idea. My issue always is with Greater Good, and this is how I look at that card, is if I don't have creatures in the deck that are going to draw me the minimum of, 3 cards, because Greater Good makes you discard 3.
Yes.
If you don't have enough creatures that at least you break even, so you draw 3 and you pitch 3 from your hand and you keep the new ones, or vice versa, I don't really like Greater Good. And looking through this deck, a lot of these creatures are 2 power or 1 power. There's a couple 3 powers and a couple more than that, but do you really want to be sacrificing your Wormcoil Engine to draw 6, discard 3, and then have to kill something to bring it back with Glissa's ability?
See, and I would be fine with that, seeing how it's a combo, like a combo-based deck, because you're just digging. You're digging for key pieces that you need. You're digging for removal, so if you're already sitting on 5 lands, you don't need any more lands. You just pitch the lands. If you're sitting on, X amount of removal spells already, you can pitch one of the removal spells for something else that you need to get the engine rolling. I mean, that's what you just need to look at when you're playing a deck like this, and it all comes down to circumstantial when you're actually in the game, how the game state's sitting, and how you're going to sack stuff. The biggest flaw I see with EDH players in general is the greediness of cards. As you brought up, Max.
No, not greedy. What?
Where you want to at least break even with a Greater Good. At least. It's, whereas if you do discard extra cards, you discard extra cards, but you're digging through a deck. 100-card deck, you need to dig through as much as possible. And in a deck that wants to just win the game via combo, that's what you need to do.
Okay. Totally get it. Yeah, I can see your point. It'd be interesting to see if that swap gets made and we get some feedback.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, because everyone that I've seen that plays Greater Good, that plays it in a combo deck, they just draw and pitch cards. They don't even care. They're just like, nope, we're doing this. And the ability to recur with Glissa allows you to just keep doing that repeatedly. I mean, that seems pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to... Do you want to do creatures or artifacts next, Chris? Because they're both kind of important.
How about we do Planeswalkers? Oh, wait, there are no Planeswalkers. What?
I was wondering if you're going to bring that up.
Very surprised to see no Planeswalkers in this deck. Seeing as how you wanted you like how this is more of a control deck, Joe, I was surprised not to see either Ugin in this deck. One Ugin gives you incremental card advantage because you create 2/2s. Then when they leave the battlefield, so it doesn't matter if they're exiled or if they die or however else they're bounced, they return to your hand. So you get that card anyways. So, I mean, that's just value right there. Plus, that the 6-mana Uga, which is Ugin the Ineffable, he has other modes that allow you to destroy something that's monocolor, I do believe, or multicolor, something like that. But his static ability says that colorless spells cost 2 less to cast. So that allows you to start jamming your cheap stuff even cheaper, almost for free, that you could just, and then guess what? We have a Tendrils of Agony, so we can start storming cards. I mean, that in general, I was just surprised not to see. Now, Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, 8 mana, yes, it's way up on curve, higher than anything else you're really playing in the deck. But the ability to just exile the entire board except for colorless stuff, which majority of yours is colorless, I think would just be priceless. I mean, and plus you get to keep Ugin plus all your artifacts. I mean, that's pretty good in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the deck is fine without the Planeswalkers. They're probably a little slow based on our assumption of this is played mainly in a combo meta.
Yes.
But at the same time, both of those suggestions are what I would have suggested as well.
Yep. I mean, you could think about the new Karn from War of the Spark, I think is where he came from, which allows you to turn artifacts into creatures. And, if something gets exiled, you can downtick them to get that exiled card back. Because, as we on this show preach, we preach exile removal. So, I mean, and a card that allows you to bring it back is phenomenal. I mean, we have access to Rift Sweeper as well in green. And I think that's the only other card, because I think there's one in white that does it as well. But there's not a whole lot of cards that allow you to do that. So, I mean, having that little bit of value is pretty good. And I know I've watched Dana do it quite a few times in his Veil of the Nightclad deck, where I'll exile something and he'll be like, oh, Karn, down tick. Oh, I get to go into outside a game or exile. Hey, let's just bring this one back. Haha, what's up?
Yeah, great suggestions. Okay, so let's start with creatures, Chris. There are 20 of them. So we'll run through these quick and then talk about any ones we want to talk about. So there is a Crystalline Giant, a Fleshbag Marauder, Foundry Inspector, Joyder's Familiar, Laden Mirror, Moriok Replica, Mirror Retriever, Myriad Construct, Noxious Gearhulk, Plague Crafter, Sarwolf, Realm Eater, Scavenging Ooze, Scrap Trawler, Shimmermere, Solemn Simulacrum, Slyvok Replica, Thopter Assembly, Tormod the Desecrator, Walking Ballista, and Wormcoil Engine.
Now I know that the notes that Joe gave us about this, he told us that he's trying out Sarulf and Tormod right now, and says that Tormod feels solid, but Sarulf kind of feels like a dud. And after reading it, I can see how it feels like a dud, especially the way that the deck plays. So for those of you that don't know, Sarulf Realm Eater is 3 mana. We have a generic and black and green for a 3/3 legendary wolf. Whenever a permanent opponent controls is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Sarulf Realm Eater. Now, at the beginning of your upkeep, if Sarulf has 1 or more +1/+1 counters on it, you may remove all of them. If you do, exile each other non-land permanent with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of counters removed this way. Now, this hits your stuff too, so I can see how this can just kind of be a nightmare. Not to mention, you got to accumulate so many counters to get rid of the big stuff. So I don't really like this card at all in the deck. So I understand why it feels like a dud for you, Joe.
Yep, I 100% agree. And, it exiles. It doesn't even do the destroy thing. So Glissa won't see any of that hit a graveyard, essentially.
Yes.
It'd be different if this was similar to Pernicious Deed. If it destroyed, I think we'd probably feel differently.
I would agree with that 100%.
But if it's exiling, especially because a lot of your stuff is, 4 CMC or less, there's a very good chance you're going to wipe your entire board and not get any of it back.
Agreed. So the one that I see that we could add in for 3 mana immediately, that I'm surprised I don't see in here due to that this is a combo-based deck, so you need to recur stuff, is an Eternal Witness. 1 colorless and double green for a 2/1 that just returns target card from the graveyard to your hand. So, I mean, anything that you could possibly need to help you get ahead in the game, it's phenomenal. Now you have a Mirror Retriever, so you could consider Junk Diver as another aspect for it, another 3 mana card. This one has flying, but returns an artifact from your graveyard to your hand when it dies. So, I mean, those two are definitely things that I would consider, not necessarily just jamming them in. It's something to kind of play test with.
Yep, I definitely love that Ewit just for some recursion. My idea to replace Sarloff is Armix Filigree Thrasher. This was a partner from Commander Legends. It's 2 and a black for a 3/2 legendary artifact creature golem. Whenever it attacks, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature defending player controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control plus the number of artifacts in your graveyard. So it's an artifact itself, so you can recur it. You're fueling your graveyard with the discard clause. It's hopefully killing a creature that of the player you're attacking, which will trigger Glissa. This just feels so perfect for what this deck wants to do.
I might have found my black color of my artifact deck now.
Well, there's the green one that goes with it too.
Oh boy, just what we know. I shouldn't be building more decks. Are you kidding me? I have too many now. Overall, I like the creature package that you have on here. I really wanted to recommend a Triplicate Titan in here, but that's way too much mana. Because I would just love to see this get recurred repeatedly and then destroyed and recurred repeatedly. It would just be stupid. I mean, I would love to watch it happen, but that CMC is way too high for something like that. Overall, I like the other stuff in here. I could see possibly you got Scrap Trawler and a few other things, so you could start leaning into other combo bases too. I like the Scavenging Ooze that allows you to, exile stuff out of someone's graveyard. Could consider a Deathrite Shaman as well. Keeps that curve low. Gives you another outlet to exile things out of people's graveyards to give you incremental value of some sort. So, I mean, that could be another idea to put in here. I like the Plague Crafter and the Fleshbag Marauder as, straight up, they come up, sack themselves, force the other people to sack off stuff. I mean, it is what it is. It's meant to be control aspect. So, I mean, overall, I'm liking everything that's in here. I do notice that there is a Hangerback Walker in the board, and that's something I'm curious to see how that worked for you, because I'm not sure if you can really, put enough into it, per se, to get it up high to start abusing it that much. And then, you could recur it with Glissa, but, I mean, that's so much mana involved with that to get it so high, to get more Thopter tokens and stuff like that. So I am curious about that aspect as well.
Yeah, I definitely feel like both Walking Ballista and the Hangerback Walker, at least with Walking Ballista, it's a little easier to abuse and, make it bigger.
Yes.
Where Hangerback, you gotta tap it, you gotta pay it, you gotta wait the turn. So I feel like Hangerback was one of those things where you pay up front a lot into it and get a bunch of little Thopters. Where Walking Ballista, you could set at 2 or 1 and slowly get your way up to something where it's gonna be a problem quickly.
Agreed.
Okay, any other creature suggestions there, Chris?
Not really. I mean, there are a lot of good creatures in these colors that could do artifact stuff, but if you put in too many of them, it's going to pull away from the combo aspect, where then you just be going into Value Town. Whereas that could push you into the fly underneath the radar aspect too, where you're just playing Value Town and you're not playing combo, because you're not going to be jamming, like Chrome Moxes and Mox Opals and all that fun jazz into the battlefield. So they're going to know that you're not abusing it per se. But then once the ball's rolling, then they're going to be like, oops, we let him go too long and now we're all dead. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, very true. I think the fact that this is probably more combo based, these cards have been selected for a very specific reason, where swapping it out for more of the Value Town train, although that's where I would want to be, probably isn't going to do this deck a lot of good. Okay, last but not least, the generic artifacts, not artifact creatures.
Generic artifacts. Woohoo!
These are all generic. All of these are super generic.
Yep, there's nothing fancy about them, There's 14 of them. We have a Mana Rock and another Mana Rock and a Destruction Spell and another Mana Rock. Oh, wait, what are these Mana Rocks? Oh, how about a Basalt Monolith, Chrome Mox, Golgari Signet? Then we also have an Executioner's Capsule, Forsaken Monument, a Helm of Awakening, a Mox Opal, Mystic Forge, Nevinyrral's Disc, Rings of Brighthearth, Scroll Rack, Sensei's Divining Top, Soul Ring, and Wayfarer's Bauble.
Yeah, those are not generic at all.
No, not even close. I mean, I guess the only one that I could consider generic out of all these is probably Soul Ring, because, it's been printed into the dirt and everyone has a Soul Ring. So, I mean, that's probably the most generic one.
Soul Ring and the Signet, yeah.
Yeah. I really like the suite that's going on here. Helm of Awakening reduces cost, as does a few of the artifact creatures that are in this deck. Rings of Brighthearth allows you to double triggers. Sensei's Divining Top's just a broken card with a card I'm going to recommend here in a minute. Mystic Forge. I mean, Mystic Forge. Yeah, hey, guess what? That's another one that you can break with Sensei's Divining Top.
Yeah, you can. It's so good.
And then you have your Infinite Mana combo in Basalt Monolith and Forsaken Monument. Those two, I do believe, makes infinite mana, right? Let me read. So Basalt Monolith taps for 3. You get an additional to 4, so you untap for 3. You net 1. Yep, that works. So that gives you, infinite colorless mana. So you still need the colored mana to go anything with anything else. So overall, I really like this package as it sits. There's not a whole lot that I would change per se. Now, my suggestions on here are Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. Those two, just to protect Glissa, because Glissa seems like she's probably where the deck revolves around. Seems like it's a key piece. So it's something to consider. I know that there's not a whole lot of room for these cards in the deck, but a little bit more protection never hurt. Another two that I always try to consider in decks that I play are Mindstone and Commander Sphere. Now, these two, a 2-mana rock and a 3-mana rock, they seem kind of lackluster in a combo base, but with the ability to recur them with Glissa, that becomes card advantage, because both of them have sack outlets to draw cards. Another one that I had on here would be Expedition Map, which, for 1 mana, you sack it for 2 mana, go for any land. So if you're going to play a Field of the Dead package or end up deciding to run into a Cabal Coffers or anything like that in there, that allows you to go for that land. So you just don't even have to hesitate. Just go for that. You can recur it with Glissa, get more. I mean, it's pretty broken. Now, the last card I'm going to suggest And anyone who's listening to this that ends up playing Joe, I didn't suggest this. Forget it. I'm using my super mind powers on you right now. Is Bolsa Citadel. Legendary artifact, 6 mana. Look at the top card of your library. You may cast the top card. You lose life equal to the CMC of that card. So you don't actually have to tap mana for it. And then sacrifice 10 permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. Bolsa Citadel. Sensei's Divining Top. Draw a card with Divining Top. Goes on top of the library. Play it again. I mean, that value right there. By the time, say that you do this when you're at 35 life, you do it 34 times, plus the storm count if you can cast off your storm card or anything like that, or you just dug down and found your other key pieces to give you infinite mana a different way or something else. I mean, it's disgusting.
It's bonkers. I mean, I run something similar in my side deck. I have the Mystic Forge, Mox Opal, Mystic Forge, Sensei's Top combo just because of all the reducers, and there's plenty of reducers in this deck to where if you have a reducer, Bolsa Citadel, and Forge and Top, you're just going to see your entire deck for free.
Well, and also, with all the cheap rocks that you have in here, the cheap other cards, the ability to sacrifice 10 non-land permanents to just drain everyone for 10 life could just win you the game right there. I actually won a game last week by doing that. I was playing against Pramicon. I forgot the other 2 generals that I was playing against. But I was playing my Mogus deck, and I was able to have them locked out with all my Mogus shenanigans, with the Bolsa Citadel there. And they're sitting there like, okay, if I do this. And so then I had them where they had no board state. They ended up tapping their mana with mana barbs out, put them both below 10 to start casting creatures in. And I just cracked the Citadel, and I'm like, okay, I guess I just hit you guys for 10 life. So, which ended the game, which is phenomenal. It could just be another win con for you in the long run.
Yeah, great suggestion. My only suggestion, and mainly because this is a brand new card from Modern Horizons 2, is Brainstone. 1 mana artifact, you pay 2, tap it, and sacrifice it to Brainstorm. Draw 3 cards, put 2 back from your hand on top of your library in any order. You can eventually recur it with Glissa, so it is a slower card selection key piece, but it does some cool stuff in a color that typically doesn't have a Brainstorm-like card.
Yep. It's a lot of mana sink into it, but it's definitely something that, if you decide to pull away from the streamline combo base, it was definitely something I would play with.
Right.
I have 2 other ones that I would suggest, and this is something that Max brought up a little bit ago. Actually, it was probably in the beginning when we started talking about this, and that was ways of destroying other people's graveyards but saving your own. And you have Soul Guide Lantern and Nihil Spellbomb. I do believe Nihil Spellbomb doesn't hit yours. Maybe it does. I don't remember for sure. But they both have the option of, hitting opponents' graveyards. Nihil Spellbomb allows you to draw a card, which then you can recur with Glissa. So, I mean, anything that you're getting as much value out of the card as possible that you can recur is something that I would look into. And these fit that low CMC clause. Now, I would love to run a Relic of Progenitus in here, but I know that for sure that hits all graveyards. Because I personally play that card, so you can't really get away from that. But the other 2 do not, and it's good value. So something to consider.
Yeah, the Nihil Spellbomb says target player exiles their graveyard.
Yep. So you hit someone who is, you've destroyed, 12 of their pieces, and they're just going to reanimate them or something, like a guy that I play with, he plays a Snapdax Reanimator deck that's just disgusting when it goes off. So, I mean, any way to stop someone from any way to stop something like that from happening against you when you're removing stuff is what you need.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I think that wraps up this deck tech for Joe. Any final thoughts there, Chris?
We're done already? I really like this deck.
Yeah, I didn't miss a category, I don't think. Lands, enchantments, artifacts, sorceries, instants, creatures, no planeswalkers.
Yeah, no planeswalkers. No planeswalkers. I don't understand it. But no, I really like this deck. The last thoughts that I would put in here, like I said, this type of deck is hard to try to make fly underneath the radar. Due to the simple fact, we discussed last week on our show about Shu Lane. Something that Dana had brought up, there's just certain generals that when they hit the field and people see what you're playing, it doesn't fly underneath the radar. They know what that deck's going to do, what it, the card can do, so they start becoming very leery of it and they want to destroy it. So it's just one of those decks you can't really fly underneath the radar. You just kind of play your game. The biggest thing I can suggest with this deck is try to play the political game. You show so many removal spells in one game, and then everyone's going to know, well, he's packed full of removal. So you can try to play that politically, like, well, I will take out that thing if you don't attack me this turn or something like that. So try to play that game, and maybe that'll help you out in the long run.
Yeah, I love this deck. Like I said earlier in the show, I've never played against a Glissa deck, or at least I don't remember playing one that isn't Dana's. I haven't really seen the pure artifact Glissa deck, so this was awesome to look through. I hope to get to play it over virtual EDH someday or in person once it's all started to rock and roll again for Command Fest and Magic Fest. But Joe, thank you so much for submitting this, and thank you for supporting us on Patreon. It means the world to us. It keeps me buying pants that I probably don't wear. So thank you, and thank you to everybody else who just listens and thumbs up on their podcasting platform of choice or supports us on Patreon. It means the world. So I think that's going to wrap up this show. You can find Dana on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find myself at CMDRCentral_Max, and you can find Chris at YSquishy1. Our show is edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find him at Ursa Bearwalker. Our theme song is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. We will be back on Monday with another episode, and until then, I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.